My name is Joanne, and I am 68 years old. For 15 years, I dedicated my entire life to raising my daughter's 3 children. I gave up my job, my friendships, my retirement, and my own dreams. I thought that was what a good mother and grandmother was supposed to do. But when the doctors told me I had cancer and I needed someone to take care of me, my daughter looked me straight in the eyes and said something that shattered my heart into a million pieces. So I did exactly what she told me. I hired a nurse, and then I removed her from my life completely. Before I tell you what my daughter said that broke my heart, I want to know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe so you do not miss the ending. Because what I did next changed everything, not just for me, but for my grandchildren too. I need to take you back to the beginning so you can truly understand the weight of what happened. My story starts in Nashville, Tennessee, where I had lived most of my adult life. I married my high school sweetheart Walter when I was just 21 years old. We built a beautiful life together in a modest 3-bedroom house with a big backyard and a wraparound porch where we would sit every evening watching the sunset. Walter and I had 2 children. Our daughter Stephanie came first, and 3 years later we welcomed our son Marcus. I poured everything I had into raising those 2 kids. I attended every school play, every soccer game, every parent-teacher conference. I baked cupcakes for their classrooms and stayed up late helping them with homework. Being a mother was the greatest joy of my life. While raising my children, I also worked full-time as an office manager for an insurance company. It was not glamorous work, but it paid the bills and gave us stability. I worked there for 30 years, building up my retirement fund and planning for the day when Walter and I would finally be able to travel the world together. But life had other plans. 18 years ago, when I was just 50 years old, Walter suffered a massive heart attack. He died in my arms before the ambulance could even arrive. The love of my life was gone in an instant, and I was left alone in that big house with nothing but memories and an overwhelming sense of emptiness. After Walter passed, I threw myself into my work even more. It was the only way I knew how to cope with the grief. My children were grown by then. Stephanie had become a successful lawyer at a prestigious firm in Nashville, and Marcus had moved to Seattle to work as a software engineer. I was proud of both of them, but I missed having someone to take care of. When Stephanie was 32 years old, she called me with exciting news. She was pregnant with her first child. I remember crying tears of joy on the phone, already imagining all the ways I would spoil my first grandchild. Stephanie had married Bradley, another lawyer at her firm, and together they seemed to have the perfect life. Big house in the suburbs, luxury cars in the driveway, vacations to exotic destinations. A few months before my granddaughter Lily was born, Stephanie called me again. But this time her voice was not filled with excitement. It was filled with stress. "Mom, I need your help," she said. "Bradley and I have been looking at daycare options, and they are all so expensive. Plus, I do not trust strangers with my baby. You know how people are these days. I was wondering if maybe you could watch Lily for us, just until she starts school. It would only be a few years." I was 53 years old at the time, still working at the insurance company with about 5 years left until my planned retirement. The idea of quitting early had never crossed my mind, but this was my daughter asking for help. This was my grandchild who would need someone to love and nurture her. How could I say no? I talked it over with myself for a few sleepless nights. I thought about the retirement I had been planning, the trips I wanted to take, the hobbies I wanted to pursue. But then I thought about my granddaughter, and none of that seemed to matter anymore. I called Stephanie back and told her I would do it. The relief in her voice was palpable. "Oh, Mom, thank you so much. You have no idea what this means to us. We could never afford the kind of care you will give her. Family is everything, right? Those words stuck with me. Family is everything. I believed that with my whole heart. I put in my notice at the insurance company and retired 5 years earlier than I had planned. My coworkers threw me a small party and gave me a gift card to a garden store. They assumed I was retiring to enjoy my golden years. I did not tell them I was retiring to become a full-time babysitter. To make things easier, I sold my beloved house, the one where Walter and I had built our life together, and moved into a small apartment just 10 minutes from Stephanie's home. It broke my heart to let go of that house, but I told myself it was for the best. I would be closer to my granddaughter, and I would not have to worry about maintaining such a big property on my own. When Lily was born, I was there at the hospital holding her tiny hand and promising to always protect her. She was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen, with her mother's blue eyes and her father's dimpled chin. I fell in love with her instantly. From that day forward, my life revolved around Lily. I arrived at Stephanie's house every morning at 6 o'clock before she and Bradley left for work. I would feed Lily breakfast, change her diapers, play with her, read to her, sing to her, take her for walks in the park, and put her down for naps. Then I would clean the house, do the laundry, and prepare dinner so that Stephanie would not have to worry about anything when she came home. I usually did not leave until 7 in the evening, sometimes later, if Stephanie and Bradley had work events or dinner meetings. I never complained. I never asked for a day off. I never expected any payment. "You are family, Mom," Stephanie would say whenever I tried to bring up the topic of compensation. "This is what family does for each other. We do not need to put a price on love." And I believed her. I truly did. Those first few years with Lily were exhausting but wonderful. I watched her take her first steps in my arms. I heard her say her first words, which happened to be Nana, not Mama. I taught her the alphabet and how to count to 100. I was there for every milestone, every triumph, every scraped knee and tearful moment. When Lily was 4 years old, Stephanie announced she was pregnant again. I was happy for her, of course, but a small part of me wondered how I would manage with 2 children. I was 57 by then, and my back was already starting to ache from all the lifting and bending. But again, how could I say no? Nathan was born on a rainy Tuesday in October. He was a fussy baby, nothing like his calm older sister. He had colic for the first 3 months and would scream for hours no matter what I did. I spent countless nights walking him around the house, bouncing him gently, trying to soothe him, while Stephanie and Bradley slept peacefully upstairs. Just when Nathan finally settled into a routine, Stephanie surprised us all with another pregnancy. Ethan arrived 2 years after Nathan, making me a grandmother of 3 at the age of 59. By this point, I had completely abandoned any semblance of my own life. I had no time for friends, no time for hobbies, no time for anything except those 3 children. My apartment was just a place where I slept for a few hours each night before returning to Stephanie's house to start all over again. I stopped going to church, something I had done every Sunday for my entire adult life. I stopped calling my old friends from work. I stopped reading books, watching movies, or doing anything just for myself. The children consumed every waking moment of my existence. But I did not mind. At least that is what I told myself. These were my grandchildren. Caring for them was my purpose, my reason for being. What else did an old widow like me have to live for? Looking back now, I can see how unhealthy that mindset was. But at the time, I was so deep in it that I could not see anything clearly. As the years went by, I started to notice small changes in Stephanie's behavior. At first, they were so subtle that I convinced myself I was imagining things, but gradually they became impossible to ignore. In the early days, Stephanie used to thank me constantly. Every time I arrived in the morning, she would give me a hug and say, "Thanks for coming, Mom. You are a lifesaver." Every evening, she would walk me to the door and tell me how much she appreciated everything I did. But somewhere around the 5th or 6th year, those thank yous started to disappear. The hugs stopped. The gratitude faded. Instead, there were only instructions and criticisms. "Mom, you need to pick up Lily at 3:00 sharp. Not 3:15. 3:00. Her teacher said you were late again last week, and it reflects badly on us. Mom, did you forget to pack Nathan's lunch?" He complained to his teacher that he was hungry. "You need to pay more attention." "Mom, the house was not clean enough when my colleagues came over. You need to do better." Her tone became sharper, more impatient. She spoke to me less like a mother and more like an employee who was not performing up to standards. But I was not an employee. I did not receive a salary. I did not get vacation days or sick leave or any of the benefits that come with employment. I was just a mother helping her daughter, a grandmother loving her grandchildren. One incident stands out in my memory more than any other from this period. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Stephanie was hosting a brunch for some of her lawyer friends. I had spent the entire morning cleaning the house from top to bottom, arranging flowers, setting the table, and preparing appetizers. When the guests arrived, Stephanie greeted them warmly at the door. I stood off to the side holding Ethan on my hip because he was going through a clingy phase and would not let me put him down. One of the women looked at me and smiled politely. "Who is this?" she asked Stephanie. "Oh, this is my mom," Stephanie replied with a dismissive wave of her hand. "She helps with the kids." That was it. She helps with the kids. Not my mom who gave up her retirement to raise my children. Not my mom who has dedicated the last 8 years of her life to our family. Just she helps with the kids as if I were nothing more than a hired hand. I felt something crack inside me that day, but I did not say anything. I just smiled and excused myself to put Ethan down for his nap. That night alone in my apartment, I cried for the first time in years. I cried for the woman I used to be and the woman I had become. I cried for all the things I had given up and all the appreciation I had never received. But in the morning, I dried my tears and went right back to Stephanie's house as if nothing had happened. Because that is what mothers do right. We sacrifice. We endure. We keep going no matter what. Around this time, I started noticing another pattern. Stephanie never invited me to important family events. When her law firm held their annual holiday party, she told me to stay home with the kids because it would be boring anyway. When she and Bradley celebrated their 10th wedding anniversary, they went on a cruise and left me with all 3 children for 2 weeks without even asking if I had other plans. When it was her birthday, I spent hours preparing a special dinner, only to find out she had made plans to go out with her friends instead. "Oh, I forgot to tell you," she said when I called to ask what time she wanted to eat. "We already have dinner reservations. Can you just watch the kids tonight?" "Thanks, Mom." I sat alone at the table that night, surrounded by food no one would eat, and wondered when I had become invisible to my own daughter. My son Marcus was completely different. He lived across the country in Seattle, but he called me every single week without fail. He asked about my health, my feelings, my life. He remembered my birthday and sent flowers every year. Whenever he came to visit, he took me out to dinner and refused to let me pay. "Mom, you work too hard," he would say with concern in his voice. "You should take a break. Tell Stephanie to hire a nanny. You deserve to have a life of your own." But I always defended Stephanie. She is just stressed with work, I would say. She does not mean to be thoughtless. She loves me in her own way. Marcus would shake his head but never push the issue. He respected my choices even when he disagreed with them. Looking back, I wish I had listened to him. I wish I had opened my eyes to what was happening right in front of me, but I was so determined to be the perfect mother and grandmother that I refused to acknowledge the truth. The truth was that Stephanie did not see me as her mother anymore. She saw me as free labor, as a convenience, as someone who existed solely to make her life easier. And I had allowed her to see me that way because I never set any boundaries, never demanded respect, never stood up for myself. That was my mistake, and it would take something as devastating as cancer to finally wake me up. 15 years had passed since I first started caring for Lily. I was 68 years old now, and my body was starting to show the wear and tear of all those years of hard work. My back ached constantly from bending over cribs and carrying toddlers. My knees creaked every time I climbed the stairs. My hands were rough and dry from endless washing and cleaning. Lily was 18 now, about to graduate high school and head off to college. She had grown into a beautiful, intelligent young woman, and I was so proud of her. Nathan was 14, already taller than me, and more interested in video games than spending time with his grandmother. Ethan was 12, the baby of the family who was no longer a baby at all. I still helped out with the boys, driving them to school, making sure they did their homework, cooking dinner for the family. But it was less demanding than when they were little. I finally had some time to catch my breath. That was when I started noticing something was wrong with my body. It began with fatigue. Not the normal tiredness that comes from a long day, but a deep bone-weary exhaustion that never seemed to go away no matter how much I slept. I would wake up in the morning feeling like I had not rested at all. Then came the back pain. It was different from my usual aches. This was a sharp, persistent pain that radiated through my lower back and would not respond to pain medication or heating pads. I started losing weight without trying. 5 pounds at first, then 10, then 15. My clothes hung loose on my frame, and I could see my collarbones protruding in a way they never had before. The worst symptom came one morning when I was getting ready for the day. I coughed, and when I looked down at the tissue in my hand, I saw blood. Bright red blood, unmistakable against the white paper. I stared at it for a long moment, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew this was not normal. I knew I needed to see a doctor, but I kept putting it off because I had responsibilities. I had to take Nathan to soccer practice and help Ethan with his science project and prepare for Lily's graduation party. It was Marcus who finally forced me to take action. He called one evening, and even though I tried to sound cheerful, he could hear something was wrong. "Mom, your voice sounds weak," he said. "Are you sick?" I tried to brush it off, but Marcus has always been able to see right through me. "Mom, promise me you will see a doctor this week," he insisted. "Promise me!" I promised, and for once I actually kept my word. The doctor's visit led to blood tests, which led to X-rays, which led to a CT scan. A week later, I found myself sitting in an oncologist's office, listening to words that no one ever wants to hear. "Mrs. Joanne," the doctor said gently, "I am afraid the results show that you have lung cancer. It is stage 2, which means it has grown, but has not spread to other parts of your body yet." I sat there in stunned silence, unable to process what he was saying. Cancer. I had cancer. The word echoed in my head like a death sentence. "The good news is that we caught it relatively early," the doctor continued. "With aggressive treatment, including chemotherapy and possibly surgery, your chances of recovery are good. But you need to understand that this will be a difficult journey. The treatment will make you very weak. You will not be able to work or care for others. You will need someone to take care of you." I nodded slowly, my mind already racing ahead to the practical implications. Who would help Stephanie with the kids? Who would drive Nathan to practice? Who would make sure Ethan did his homework? Even in that moment, sitting in the doctor's office with a cancer diagnosis hanging over my head, my first thoughts were about everyone else. It would take me a while longer to start thinking about myself. That evening, I called Marcus first. I could not bear to hear his reaction face to face. When I told him the news, there was a long silence on the other end of the line, and then I heard him crying. "Mom, I am booking a flight right now," he said through his tears. "I will be there tomorrow." "No, Marcus, you do not have to do that," I protested. "You have your job, your life in Seattle." "You are my mother," he said firmly. "There is nothing more important. I will talk to my company about working remotely. I am not leaving you alone during this." His words wrapped around me like a warm blanket. Even though I told him it was not necessary, a part of me was deeply grateful. At least one of my children saw me as more than just a caregiver. After hanging up with Marcus, I stared at my phone for a long time before finally dialing Stephanie's number. My hands were shaking as I waited for her to answer. "Hi, Mom. What is up?" she said when she picked up. Her voice sounded distracted, like she was in the middle of something else. "Stephanie, I have some news," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I went to the doctor today. They found something. I have lung cancer." There was silence on the other end of the line. I waited for her gasp of shock, her words of concern, her offer to come over immediately. Instead, what I heard was this. "Oh, that is terrible, Mom. So who is going to watch the boys?" I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Of all the things she could have said, of all the responses she could have given, that was her first thought. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "What can I do to help?" Not, "I am coming over right now." Just, "Who is going to watch the boys?" I mumbled something about needing to figure things out and ended the call as quickly as I could. Then I sat in my dark apartment and tried to make sense of what had just happened. Maybe she was just in shock, I told myself. Maybe she did not know how to react. Maybe she will call back once she has had time to process the news. I waited by the phone all night. It never rang. A week passed and Stephanie did not call, did not visit, did not even send a text message to ask how I was doing. The only communication I received from her was a brief message that said, "Let me know when you start treatment." I showed the message to Marcus when he arrived from Seattle. His face darkened with anger. "That is all she said?" he asked incredulously. "After everything you have done for her, she is just processing it in her own way," I said, still making excuses for my daughter. "I am sure she will come around." But even as I said the words, I did not believe them anymore. After 2 weeks of silence, I decided I could not wait any longer. I needed to have a real conversation with Stephanie about my situation. I needed to know if I could count on her during my treatment. So I drove to her house one afternoon unannounced, hoping that face-to-face communication would be different from phone calls and text messages. Stephanie opened the door looking surprised and slightly annoyed. Her hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she was dressed in her work-from-home attire, an expensive blouse and yoga pants that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. "Mom, what are you doing here?" she asked. "I have a conference call in 15 minutes. I need to talk to you," I said. "It is important." She sighed and stepped aside to let me in. The house looked immaculate, which I found strange, since I had not been there to clean it in weeks. Then I noticed the cleaning supplies on the counter and realized she must have hired someone. We sat down in the living room, the same room where I had spent countless hours playing with her children, reading them stories, bandaging their scraped knees. It felt different now, like I was a guest in a stranger's home. "Stephanie." I began trying to keep my voice calm. I want to talk to you about my treatment. The doctor says I will need chemotherapy for several months. I am going to be very weak. I will not be able to drive myself to the hospital. I will need help with cooking, cleaning, basic daily tasks. I paused and looked at my daughter, searching her face for any sign of the little girl I had raised, the daughter who used to crawl into my lap and tell me she loved me. I was hoping you could help me during this time, I continued. You know the way I have helped you all these years. Stephanie crossed her arms and leaned back in her chair. Her expression was unreadable. Mom, I understand you are sick, she said slowly. But you have to understand my situation too. I have my career, which is very demanding right now. I am up for partner this year, and I have 3 kids who need me. I cannot just drop everything to take care of you. I dropped everything for 15 years to take care of your kids, I said, my voice cracking despite my efforts to stay composed. That was your choice, Stephanie replied coolly. Nobody forced you to do that. I stared at her in disbelief. My choice. She made it sound like I had volunteered for a hobby, not sacrificed my entire retirement to help her build her career and raise her family. You begged me to help you, I reminded her. You said you needed me. You said you could not trust strangers with your baby. Stephanie waved her hand dismissively. That was a long time ago, Mom. Things are different now. The kids are older. They do not need constant supervision anymore. But I need help now, I said, and I hated how desperate I sounded. I have cancer, Stephanie. I might be dying. She stood up abruptly, glancing at her watch. Look, I do not have time for this guilt trip right now. If you need someone to take care of you, just hire a nurse. You have savings, right? That is what professionals are for. Hire a nurse. I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. After everything I have done for you, your advice is to hire a nurse. Mom, be reasonable, she said impatiently. I have a job. Bradley has a job. We have responsibilities. We cannot just rearrange our entire lives because you got sick. A nurse is the practical solution. They are trained for this kind of thing. They will probably take better care of you than I could anyway. I sat there frozen as her words washed over me. Hire a nurse. After 15 years of free babysitting, free housekeeping, free cooking, free everything. After giving up my job, my house, my social life, my entire identity. After sacrificing my golden years to serve her family. Hire a nurse. I really need to take this conference call now, Stephanie said, already walking toward her home office. We will talk more later. Okay? And just like that, she left me sitting alone in her living room, surrounded by family photos that did not include me in a house. I had cleaned thousands of times, feeling more alone than I had ever felt in my entire life. I do not know how long I sat there. It could have been minutes or hours. I just stared at the wall, trying to comprehend what had just happened. My daughter, my firstborn child, the baby I had nursed and rocked and loved with every fiber of my being, had just told me to hire a nurse. Eventually, I stood up on shaking legs and let myself out the front door. Stephanie did not come out of her office to say goodbye. The drive home was a blur. I had to pull over twice because I could not see the road through my tears. When I finally made it to my apartment, I collapsed on the couch and sobbed like I had not sobbed since Walter died. Marcus called that evening, and when he heard my voice, he immediately knew something terrible had happened. Mom, what is wrong? What did Stephanie say? I told him everything, every cruel word, every dismissive gesture, every cold look on her face. When I finished, there was a long silence. Mom, I am so sorry, Marcus finally said, his voice thick with emotion. She does not deserve you. She never has. She is my daughter, I whispered. I love her. I know, Mom, but loving someone does not mean you let them treat you like garbage. You deserve better than this. You deserve to be cared for by people who actually appreciate you. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation with Stephanie over and over in my mind. And somewhere in those dark hours, something shifted inside me. I had spent 15 years putting everyone else first. I had given and given and given until there was almost nothing left of me. And what had I received in return? Not gratitude, not appreciation, not even basic human decency, just a cold instruction to hire a nurse. Well then, if that was what my daughter wanted, that was exactly what I was going to do, but I was going to do it on my own terms, and I was going to make sure she understood the full consequences of her words. I woke up the next morning with a clarity I had not felt in years. The tears were gone, replaced by something harder and more determined. I was done crying. I was done making excuses. I was done being a doormat for my own daughter. Stephanie had told me to hire a nurse, so that is exactly what I would do. But first I had some other business to attend to. I went to my filing cabinet and pulled out all my important documents. My will, my life insurance policy, my bank statements, my investment portfolio. I spread them out on my kitchen table and looked at them with new eyes. My financial situation was modest but solid. I had a small pension from my 30 years at the insurance company. I had Social Security benefits. I had savings of about $300,000 from a combination of my retirement fund and the sale of my house. And I had a life insurance policy worth $200,000. Most importantly, I owned my apartment outright. It was small, just a one-bedroom in a quiet complex, but it was mine. And according to my real estate agent friend, it was worth about $150,000 in the current market. My existing will written years ago divided everything equally between Stephanie and Marcus. At the time that had seemed fair. They were both my children. I loved them both. Why would I favor one over the other? But things were different now. One of my children had demonstrated unwavering love and support during the worst moment of my life. The other had told me to hire a nurse. I called my lawyer that afternoon and made an appointment for the following day. When I walked into his office, I was nervous but resolute. I explained my situation, my cancer diagnosis, my daughter's response, my decision to change my will. The lawyer listened without interruption, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. "Are you sure about this?" he asked when I finished. "Disinheriting a child is a significant decision. It can cause permanent rifts in families." "The rift already exists," I replied. "I am just finally acknowledging it." We spent the next 2 hours drafting a new will. Under the new terms, Stephanie was completely removed as a beneficiary. Instead, my assets would be distributed as follows. Marcus would receive 50% of my estate. He had shown me what true family love looked like, and I wanted to reward that loyalty. The remaining 50% would be divided equally among my 3 grandchildren, Lily, Nathan, and Ethan, in the form of trust funds. The money would be held by an independent trustee until each child reached the age of 25. This was important. I wanted my grandchildren to benefit from my estate, but I did not want Stephanie to have any control over the funds. Knowing her, she would find a way to use the money for herself if given the opportunity. The lawyer drew up all the paperwork, and I signed everything that same day. When I walked out of his office, I felt lighter than I had in years. A weight I did not even know I was carrying had been lifted from my shoulders. The next step was hiring a nurse. I did my research carefully, reading reviews and checking credentials. I eventually found a home health care agency with excellent ratings and scheduled an interview with one of their nurses. Her name was Patricia, and from the moment she walked into my apartment, I knew she was the right choice. She was about 50 years old with kind eyes and a warm smile. She had been a nurse for over 25 years and had specialized in oncology care for the past decade. We talked for over an hour, not just about my medical needs, but about our lives, our families, our hopes and fears. Patricia told me about her own mother who had passed away from breast cancer several years earlier. She understood what I was facing not just medically, but emotionally. By the end of our conversation, I had hired her on the spot. Marcus arrived from Seattle a few days later. True to his word, he had arranged to work remotely for the foreseeable future. He moved into my small apartment, sleeping on the pull-out couch without a single complaint. "You did not have to do this," I told him for the 100th time. "Mom, stop," he said gently. "You are my mother. I want to be here." Having Marcus and Patricia by my side made all the difference as I began my cancer treatment. The chemotherapy was brutal, just as the doctor had warned. It left me weak, nauseous, and exhausted. There were days when I could barely lift my head off the pillow, but I was never alone. Patricia came every day to monitor my vitals, manage my medications, and help me with basic tasks like bathing and dressing. Marcus took over cooking and cleaning, learning to make all my favorite comfort foods from recipes I dictated from my bed. As the weeks passed, something unexpected happened. I started to rediscover myself. For 15 years, my entire identity had been wrapped up in being a caregiver for Stephanie's children. I had forgotten what I liked, what I wanted, who I was outside of that role. Now confined to my apartment by illness and treatment, I finally had time to explore those questions. Patricia brought me books from the library, and I devoured them hungrily. Marcus introduced me to streaming services, and I binge-watched shows I had never had time to enjoy. I reconnected with old friends who were shocked to hear from me after so many years of silence. I also joined a cancer support group that met weekly at the local hospital. Being surrounded by others who understood what I was going through was incredibly healing. We shared our fears, our frustrations, our small victories. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was part of a community that actually valued my presence. One of the brightest spots during this difficult time was an unexpected visit from Lily. She showed up at my door one Saturday afternoon, looking nervous but determined. "Grandma." "I had to see you," she said as soon as I opened the door. "Mom told me you were sick, but she would not give me any details. I had to find out from Uncle Marcus what was really going on." I pulled her into a hug, and we both started crying. Lily spent the entire afternoon with me. She listened as I told her about my diagnosis, my treatment, and yes, about my conversation with her mother. I tried to be fair, tried not to poison her against Stephanie, but Lily was smart enough to draw her own conclusions. "I am so sorry, Grandma," she said, her eyes red from crying. "What Mom did was wrong. You do not deserve to be treated like that. You basically raised me. You were more of a mother to me than she ever was." Her words broke my heart and healed it at the same time. From that day forward, Lily visited me regularly. She came every weekend, sometimes more often, always bringing flowers or homemade cookies or just her presence. She told me about her plans for college, her dreams for the future, her fears and hopes. And I listened, grateful beyond words that our bond had survived her mother's selfishness. Nathan and Ethan were harder to see. They were still young, still dependent on their parents for transportation and permission. But Lily kept me updated on their lives, and she promised to bring them to visit as soon as she could. About 3 months into my treatment, I received an unexpected phone call from Stephanie. It was the first time she had reached out since our conversation at her house. "Mom, how are you doing?" she asked, her voice artificially cheerful. I am managing, I replied cautiously. Patricia is taking good care of me. Who is Patricia? The nurse I hired. Just like you suggested. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Oh, good. That is good. Another pause longer this time. Mom, I have been thinking, Stephanie said finally. Maybe I should be more involved in your care. You know, come visit more often, help out around the apartment. I was not fooled for a second. I knew exactly why she was suddenly interested in being involved. Lily must have mentioned something about my changed circumstances. Or maybe Stephanie had done the math and realized that her elderly mother might not have much time left, which meant inheritance decisions needed to be made soon. That is kind of you to offer, I said carefully. But I have everything under control. Marcus is here, Patricia is here. I do not need anything else. But Mom, I am your daughter, Stephanie protested. I should be there for you. Should have been, I thought bitterly. You should have been there for me 3 months ago, but I did not say that. Instead, I just told her I was tired and needed to rest. We hung up with vague promises to talk again soon. A week later, Stephanie showed up at my apartment unannounced. Marcus was out getting groceries, so I was alone when I answered the door. She looked around my small space with barely concealed distaste. The apartment was clean but modest, nothing like her sprawling suburban home. Her eyes lingered on the medical equipment, the pill bottles lined up on the counter, the wheelchair folded in the corner for the days when I was too weak to walk. Mom, I think we got off on the wrong foot, she said, settling herself on my couch without being invited. I want to make things right between us. I sat down across from her, keeping my expression neutral. Why now? Stephanie. What changed? She fidgeted with her expensive handbag. I just realized that life is short, you know. You being sick made me think about what is really important. Family is important. You are important to me. The words sounded rehearsed hollow. I waited for her to get to the real reason for her visit. Anyway, she continued, I was talking to Bradley and we thought maybe we could help out more. You know, financially or whatever. Make sure you have everything you need. I have everything I need, I said evenly. Stephanie nodded, but she did not look satisfied. Mom, can I ask you something? When I called Marcus last week, he mentioned something about your will. He said you had made some changes recently. There it was. The real reason for her sudden interest in reconciliation. I looked at my daughter. Really looked at her maybe for the first time in years. I saw a woman who had taken and taken without ever giving back. A woman who had viewed her own mother as nothing more than free labor. A woman who even now was more concerned about her inheritance than about my health. Yes, I said calmly. I changed my will. You are no longer in it. The color drained from Stephanie's face. What? You cannot do that. I am your daughter. And I am your mother, I replied. The one you told to hire a nurse when I was diagnosed with cancer. Stephanie opened her mouth to protest, but I held up my hand. Let me finish. For 15 years, I gave you everything. I gave up my job, my home, my friends, my entire life to raise your children. I woke up at 5 a.m. and did not go to bed until midnight. I changed thousands of diapers, made thousands of meals, drove thousands of miles. I never asked for a penny. I never complained. I never took a single vacation. My voice was rising now, all the pain and anger I had suppressed for so long finally finding release. And when I got sick, when I needed you for the first time in 15 years, you told me to hire a nurse. You did not offer to help. You did not come to visit. You did not even call to see if I was still alive. You just told me to hire a professional and get out of your way." "Mom." "I was stressed," Stephanie said, her voice wavering. "I did not mean it the way it sounded. You meant every word I said firmly. And now I am giving my love and my resources to people who actually care about me. Marcus has been here every day since my diagnosis. Patricia, who I have known for 3 months, has shown me more kindness than you have in 15 years. Even Lily, your own daughter, has visited me more times than you have. The money should go to family," Stephanie argued, her voice hardening. "Whatever I said, I am still your blood." "Family is not about blood," I replied. "Family is about who shows up. And you did not show up." "What about the kids?" Stephanie demanded. "Are you punishing them for my mistakes?" "No. The kids are provided for. I set up trust funds for each of them. But you will not have any control over that money. An independent trustee will manage it until they are 25 years old." "That is not fair," Stephanie protested. "I am their mother. I should have access to their inheritance." I almost laughed at the irony. "No, Stephanie, you should not. If I left you in charge, you would find a way to spend it on yourself. I know you too well." Stephanie stood up abruptly, her face flushed with anger. "You will regret this," she said. "I am your only daughter. When you are dying in that hospital bed, you are going to wish I was there." I looked at her calmly. "No, Stephanie. I will have Marcus. I will have Patricia. I will have my grandchildren who love me despite having a mother who taught them nothing about gratitude. I will be surrounded by people who actually show up for me." Stephanie grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. "This is not over," she said. "Yes, it is," I replied. "Goodbye, Stephanie." She slammed the door behind her, and just like that, she was gone. I sat in the sudden silence, waiting to feel regret or sadness or doubt. But none of those feelings came. Instead, I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. Peace. I had finally stood up for myself. I had finally demanded the respect I deserved. I had finally stopped letting my daughter take advantage of me, and whatever happened next, I knew I had made the right decision. The months that followed were challenging but transformative. My chemotherapy treatments continued, leaving me weak and sick, but also slowly destroying the cancer that had invaded my body. Patricia and Marcus were by my side through all of it, holding my hand during the worst moments, celebrating with me during the small victories. 1 year after my diagnosis, I received the news I had been praying for. The cancer was in remission. It was not completely gone, and I would need regular monitoring for the rest of my life, but for now I had won. When the oncologist told me the results, I broke down in tears. Marcus held me as I sobbed with relief and joy and gratitude. "You did it, Mom," he said, his own eyes wet with tears. "You beat it." "I could not have done it without you," I told him. "You and Patricia. You saved my life." After my treatment ended, Patricia officially retired as my nurse. But our relationship did not end. She had become one of my closest friends, and we continued to see each other regularly. We went out for coffee, watched movies together, and talked for hours about everything and nothing. My support group friends threw me a party to celebrate my remission. Standing in that room surrounded by people who understood my journey, I felt a sense of belonging I had not experienced in years. Lily stayed true to her word and remained a constant presence in my life. She enrolled in nursing school inspired, she told me, by watching Patricia take care of me. I cried when she told me her career choice. "You are going to be an amazing nurse," I told her. "You have so much compassion." "I learned it from you, Grandma," she replied. As she got older and more independent, Lily started bringing Nathan and Ethan to visit me as well. The boys were initially awkward, not quite knowing how to act around a grandmother they had been separated from for so long. But gradually, we rebuilt our relationship. I learned about their interests, their friends, their dreams, and they learned about me not just as Grandma the babysitter, but as Joanne the person. I was careful never to badmouth Stephanie in front of her children. Whatever my feelings about my daughter, I did not want to poison her relationship with her kids. But I also did not hide the truth when they asked questions. I told them as gently as I could about what had happened and why things had changed. They understood more than I expected. Lily especially had seen her mother's behavior firsthand and had drawn her own conclusions long before I ever said a word. As for Stephanie, our relationship remained strained for a long time. She did not contact me after our confrontation, and I did not reach out to her. For a while, I thought we might never speak again, but time has a way of changing things. About a year after my treatment ended, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Stephanie. Not an email or a text message, but an actual handwritten letter on fancy stationery. I opened it with trembling hands, not sure what to expect. The letter was long, several pages of her neat handwriting. In it, Stephanie apologized for how she had treated me. She admitted that she had taken me for granted, that she had been selfish and cruel, that she had failed me when I needed her most. She wrote about how her children's changed attitude had forced her to look at herself honestly for the first time. Lily had confronted her directly, telling her that she was ashamed of how Stephanie had treated me. Nathan and Ethan had started asking uncomfortable questions about why Grandma did not come around anymore. Even Bradley had expressed concern about the rift in the family. But mostly Stephanie wrote it was the silence that forced me to think. For the first time in my life, you were not there to clean up my messes, to make my life easier, to put me first. And I realized how much I had lost. Not your money or your babysitting services, but you, my mother, the woman who gave me everything and asked for nothing in return. The letter ended with a request to meet and talk whenever I was ready. I read the letter 3 times before I was able to process it. Then I set it aside and thought about what I wanted to do. But another part of me, the part that had raised her, that had loved her since before she was born, wanted to believe that people could change. Wanted to believe that my daughter had finally learned something. I waited a week before responding. Then I wrote her a short note. Stephanie, thank you for your letter. I appreciate your apology. I am not ready to forget what happened, and I am not ready for things to go back to the way they were, but I am willing to try to build something new. If you are truly sorry, show me with your actions, not just your words. That is all I ask. Mom. It has been 2 years since I sent that note. Stephanie and I are slowly, carefully rebuilding our relationship. We have lunch together once a month. She calls me every Sunday. She finally started saying thank you again, something she had stopped doing years ago. Is our relationship what it used to be? No. And honestly, I do not think it ever will be. The trust that was broken may never fully heal, but we are trying. And sometimes that is all you can do. I am 70 years old now. My cancer remains in remission, though I still go for regular checkups. My hair grew back after the chemotherapy, grayer than before, but still thick and full. I have more energy than I expected, enough to enjoy my life in ways I never did during those 15 years of constant caregiving. Looking back on everything that happened, I have learned some lessons that I want to share with you. The first lesson is this. Loving someone does not mean you have to lose yourself. For 15 years, I poured every ounce of my being into caring for Stephanie's children. I thought that was what a good mother and grandmother was supposed to do. But in the process, I forgot that I was a person too, with my own needs, my own dreams, my own value. It took cancer to teach me that I matter, that my time is precious, that my labor has worth, that I deserve to be cared for, not just to care for others. The second lesson is this: actions speak louder than words. Stephanie said she loved me many times over the years, but when the moment came to show that love, she failed completely. Meanwhile, Marcus rarely spoke about love, but he showed it every single day. He showed up. He was present. He made sacrifices without being asked. If someone tells you they love you but treats you like you do not matter, believe their actions, not their words. The third lesson is this: it is never too late to stand up for yourself. For years, I accepted disrespect because I thought that was my role as a mother. I made excuses for Stephanie's behavior. I told myself it was normal. I convinced myself that my feelings did not matter, but they did matter. And when I finally stood up and demanded better treatment, everything changed. Not just in my relationship with Stephanie, but in my relationship with myself. I finally recognized my own worth. The fourth and final lesson is this: forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. I chose to forgive Stephanie not because she deserved it, but because holding on to anger was poisoning my own happiness. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It does not mean pretending the hurt never happened. It just means releasing the grip that resentment has on your heart so you can move forward. I am at peace now. I have Marcus, who calls me every day and visits whenever he can. I have my grandchildren who love me and show up for me. I have Patricia and my support group friends. I have my books and my shows and my small but comfortable apartment. And yes, I have Stephanie too. Our relationship is different than it was, more honest, more boundaried, more careful. But we are trying. And that is enough for me. If you are out there right now giving everything to someone who takes you for granted, I want you to know this. You deserve better. You deserve to be loved, not just needed. You deserve to be appreciated, not just used. And it is never, ever too late to start putting yourself first. Sometimes the people who say they love you the most are the ones who see you the least. Open your eyes before it is too late. I almost did not, but I am glad I finally did. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where someone you loved took you for granted? What did you do about it? Please share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who is going through the same thing. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you have not already, please subscribe to this channel so you do not miss more stories like mine. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. I hope it brought you some comfort, some wisdom, or at least something to think about. Remember, you are worthy of love exactly as you are. Never let anyone make you feel otherwise. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Until next time.